But we're seeing more frequently that these lines are breaking down and they are becoming brittle and they're snapping, especially in hard to access places. They're not very reliable. The time is done, parts aren't available, and we cannot replace them. This here is a Hynautics hydraulic engine throttle and gear control system. They've been around for decades, and I mean decades, and what that means now is as there's no further part availability for them, when they start to fail, they really start to fail. And it's not so much the problem of them failing, it's what happens when they fail to your boat, and that's the real risk here. So let's say, for example, when we run the scenario that you end up with a loss of pressure in the fluid, you end up with a leak in one of the slave actuators. What's going to happen? Your boat could get stuck in gear, your boat could get stuck in neutral, your boat could get stuck with revs on the engine and you can't stop it. The problem when one of these systems goes wrong, you have a major problem on your hands. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the components and how you can try to maintain them. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you what we do to improve the system entirely to make your boating experience safer and more reliable. So when it comes to the components here and how a Hynautic systems work, you have the canister, which is the reservoir, that is a pressure-filled canister. And what actually runs through the system is a 50-50 mix of an ethylene glycol without any form of stop leak and distilled water. That in here has to be pressurized up to over 80 psi of pressure, which then feeds not only down from your throttles to your gearbox and your throttle actuators. So as I said, reservoir, the way that this is required to be, this system operates 2 engines and 2 gearboxes. Your red levers operate your throttles, which then talks to both the port and starboard actuators, which have to be mounted on the engine. And the black levers were your gears for your 3-position forward, neutral, reverse, which then talks to the actuators on your gearbox, again, for forward, neutral, reverse. So what fails, what goes wrong? Well, you can end up with external leaks. Say for example, out of any of the fittings coming out, you can end up with internal leaks because of course you've got O-rings inside the slave cylinders. They can fail internally. So you might not know you've got a leak and one day your boat just stops working. You can have internal and external leaks up on the throttle heads as well. So if you are looking for a problem, first thing you need to do is to come down to your canister and actually make sure that you are running at least 80 psi of pressure inside this canister. You need to check your fluid level. Make sure that you have at least half of the reservoir on your sight tube is filled with fluid. If any of those aren't there, you need to start here. You need to re-top it up, put 100 psi of pressure into it, and then by using the air valve on the top here, and then you have the fun process of starting to look for the leaks. And this can be a hard process. All the lines run from here in your engine room up to the flybridge or to the wheelhouse. You could have a broken line, a minor leak somewhere on a line. There's so many places of failure on these systems here. And the other thing I don't like about them is they're not very reliable. The time is done, parts aren't available, and we cannot replace them. So now you've pressurized this canister, you've got the fluid level right, you need to come through and actually check all of your lines. You have to check for any external leaks on the throttle heads and on the actuators themselves. Let's say you don't find anything. You know there's a problem there somewhere, but you just don't know where it is. The next thing to do, you've got to re-bleed every component. So to re-bleed the components, what you have to do is again have 100 psi in this. You have to come up and either take off the lines, which is not ideal, or better, use the bleed points on the side and use the bleed points here to actually bleed out the pressure. But you can't do it all at once. You've got to make sure you don't lose less than 80 psi in the canister and that your fluid level doesn't get too low, or else you have to stop, seal it off, come back, refill your fluid in, repressurize your canister and go again. And you've got to repeat that process 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times over for a twin engine installation until you are sure that you have no bubbles of air coming out and you have completely refilled the system. Now this is no different to a clutch or a braking system on a car where you have to make sure you've got solid fluid in that system. So it is quite a time-consuming process to do this. Now let's say for example you found a problem, you've got an external leak, you have to repair that external leak, but we're seeing more frequently that these lines are breaking down and they are becoming brittle and they're snapping, especially in hard to access places as they travel from the engine room up to the flybridge. So be very, very conscious that if you have an older boat with the Hynautics, your days are numbered. If you can't find your problem, if you've had enough of your Hynautics, then there is a solution.
The flexible throttle control system. So whereas you had the 2 black levers and the 2 red levers for gearboxes and throttles, don't need that anymore. We're simply down to 2 levers instead of 4. Clicks for in and out of forward, neutral and reverse, and then we simply extend the push on these throttle levers for your revs. Now you'll see that these here provide control for your throttle and your gearbox, 1 actuator box per engine gearbox combination to go in the engine room, and then just a short Morse cable, which means this system is perfectly compatible to replace a Hynautic system because it works on older mechanical engines, mechanical gearboxes. So tie into the fact that you can get the flexible throttle head and a base plate that fits directly under it, which is the exact same dimensions as the Hynautics. It's a great, easy solution. Anyone can plug in, mount these. They're a plug and play solution to replace that Hynautic system. So either whether you need help to fix your Hynautics to keep them running that bit longer, or if you're ready to upgrade, contact us here at THT. We're always happy to help because we know our throttle control systems. I'm Josh, thanks for watching.